are bringing you exploring our AI's role in education, and we are lucky to have come into contact in the spring with Microsoft, and they ran a session for us in Northside, outside of San Antonio. And so tonight we are doing the virtual form of that training here so that we could reach everyone across the state and give you this opportunity to learn about AI in your classroom and how it can help you. So with us this evening, we have Greg Bianchi and Emma Gray. They're both with Microsoft. And then Rob Weil from AFT will be coming on towards the end to talk about the safeguards that AFT has put in place regarding AI in the classroom. So with that, Greg, I will hand it over to you and Emma.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jamie, for that kind introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Bianchi, and I work at Microsoft Philanthropies, and I lead our partnership work, including our partnership with the American Federation of Teachers and with the AFL-CIO as well. And I want to note that I'm also a former high school science teacher and worked in public education for 15 years. So really excited about this partnership and excited that you joined today to learn a little bit more about AI's role in education, and look forward to hearing your voice throughout this webinar. And I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Emma Gray, for an introduction.
Hey everybody, my name is Emma Gray. I'm joining you from Vancouver, Canada today, and I am a product manager on our AI enhanced learning team, which means that it's my job to talk to educators and to students and understand what it is exactly they are facing when it comes to challenges and opportunities in school today, and then to take all those conversations, package them up and bring them to the engineering teams so that we build new things that are actually helpful. And so I'm constantly checking back with the educators in my circles. We're so lucky to have AFT educators as parts of those conversations. And I'm super stoked to be here to talk about AI in education today.
Thank you, Emma. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly ground us in the work that we're doing, why we're partnered with AFT. So at Microsoft, our mission is really to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And from a philanthropist perspective, where I sit on our skilling team, we believe that we need to enable people with the skills to participate in the digital economy. And in particular, at this time, that includes skills for the AI economy. And we talk about how AI skills are really relevant in different roles and including in education. So I'm excited today to spend the couple hours here with you, but I'd also just share that this work got started, as Jamie referenced, almost a year ago, and certainly last spring in Texas particularly. And then we had a summit or a symposium in Chicago with AFTU, and teachers across the country participated and got so many good perspectives and so much great input on how AI is being leveraged in the classroom by teachers currently. So we've really tried to incorporate a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from AFT, both through surveys and through conversations that we had even prior to today with educators, professional learning events that we've done, all in this partnership with AFT. So thanks again for joining, and I'm going to dive in by just sharing a little bit of an overview of how we'll spend our time today. We want to start with just kind of taking a temperature check on what AI experience or I'd say background that you have as it relates to your classroom, how you think about using it to date, and then we're going to get into how should we think about AI in education. What are some of the I mentioned that we've done a number of these events and we've collected some data. So what are we hearing in terms of like the exciting points for leveraging AI, and what are some of the concerns or as Jamie referenced, guardrails around AI in the classroom. So we'll talk through those, and then we'll get into what we'll call the hands-on portion of this session, where we're going to explore Copilot and we're going to explore Conmigo and a few other AI tools, and then we'll wrap this up with sharing out questions and then some resources for your additional learning. So that's just a little preview, and we want to make sure this is interactive. So please use the chat. Em and I are here as a team, so that when I'm presenting, she can kind of cover the chat and vice versa. And we just really welcome that participation. And we're going to start with that poll. So we're gonna have you put in chat your response to this kind of opener question, which is, what is your current level of comfort and experience with generative AI? And I shouldn't say it with chat because we actually have an actual poll. Thank you for setting that up. That looks really good. So I'm seeing the data come in live. Love that. So we've got a good blend. So we have AI novice, explorers, enthusiasts. Awesome. Okay, I got an advocate. Love that. Good to know the background of people here as well. Keep populating that. We appreciate you kind of jumping in. I'd say wherever you are on this spectrum, I hope that you find something here that you can use and take back to the classroom. Our goal is to, have a great conversation today. We'll have some breakout rooms for us to kind of dive into these. As I said, we'll get hands-on. But I think a great takeaway would be for every one of you to hopefully leave this session, with some new skills that you can apply in teaching and learning. All right. So with that, I want to just kind of like ground us in, AI didn't just appear overnight, though it can certainly feel that way, right? Because when we're talking about AI right now, we tend to be talking about a particular form of AI called generative AI. So we sometimes use those things interchangeably, but of course, artificial intelligence has existed much longer. But this ability to use generative AI to create, written, visual, and auditory content through giving it prompts or entering data. That's kind of the new magic, right? That everyone's excited about and thinking about how they can use in their classroom. And I figured no better way to explain this than to actually phone a friend, which in this case is going to be Minecraft. So I'm going to play this, and hopefully this does a good job of setting the table.
You had to search in so many different places. And if you didn't look in the right place, you wouldn't find what you were looking for. But today, you can use the power of AI, artificial intelligence, to help you search for information. AI is a technology people created that can do many things, including helping come up with ideas and solutions for big problems. It's a bit hard to explain, so Chicken has volunteered to help. Yes, you. First, programmers have to teach the AI model. That's like Chicken training on huge amounts of information about lots of different things. Once that's done, the AI model starts to find patterns in the information it's been given. Like, books about tigers often mention cats, but websites about cats rarely mention cars. Pictures of cars often include dogs, but scientific studies about dogs almost never mention saxophones. And once the AI has found millions and millions of patterns, it can start making predictions. Like the prediction that fish are unlikely to be found in trees, or in fields, or in mugs of water, or even in puddles, but also the prediction that fish do live in large bodies of water, like rivers and lakes. Now, sometimes AI systems make mistakes. For example, whales do not live in lakes, so we should always double-check what AI is telling us. AI is very new, and like most technology, it's being improved all the time. Okay, Chicken, you can relax now. Thanks for your help. What do you think AI will be able to do next?
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. Just want to note that's really
Finding information.
That's actually part of a series. So we do have a Minecraft AI series, and Emma's going to share a little bit of those resources later. But hopefully that gave you a little bit of a groundwork for how we're going to talk about AI, how we should be thinking about AI, and the ways in which we can start to consider using it in the classroom. And I just also think it's important that as we are rolling up our sleeves and learning about AI and thinking about how do we apply this in the classroom, we reinforce the why, because I recognize as a former educator that there's a lot on your plates. So to invest time in this is also, I think important for us to first explain that the premise here is when we can put time into, learning how to use the new AI tools, the return is that we're going to get time back, right? To really reinvest and focus our precious time on the things that are most important for us to put our attention on. And, we see that same kind of pattern really everywhere. So we've done surveys broadly to just confirm that, like, not just teachers, but professionals in general are kind of struggling to, fit in the work that needs to get done in the workday. And for educators, that's absolutely true, right? So already like 70% of educators are turning to AI in some way, shape, or form. And this is an exploratory phase, right? So folks are learning new tricks and ways of leveraging AI, and we want to create platforms for that to be shared. But we already see that, like, in addition to using it, this investment of time has resulted in users actually having more motivation and enjoyment for work. So that's the promise, right? Is if we can invest that time and learn these new skills, we're going to reclaim some time, and we're going to find that it really allows us to reconnect to our core passion. But then we can also use these AI tools really to enhance teaching and learning in the form of differentiation, lesson planning, and in so many other ways that we'll unpack today. One other kind of component of the why is just the bigger picture that, I know as educators, we think about, like, what are the skills that will be required for our students as they enter the workforce? And we know now from our Work Trends Index data that 82% of leaders of organizations say that employees will need new skills to prepare for AI. But I just wanted to give you I think it's also helpful to see, well, what kind of skills? And some of these skills, I think it's nice to just see, or what we would call those truly human skills, or those core skills, or sometimes even called power skills. But AI is not going to be replacing the need for emotional intelligence or creative evaluation or intellectual curiosity. Where we stand on this, and what we truly believe is that AI is going to augment, right? And it's going to be an important tool in education. But not
Okay.
I think we had someone come off mute real quick. Thanks. Okay, perfect. So to kind of get to that next point of, like, well, how are educators already using it? And this is where I would welcome you all to jump in chat. I'm showing here some of the data that we got from a survey that we did with Texas AFT in May and June. And the question was, like, how are you currently using AI in education today? And you can see, the answers here. Number one, most popular, was to help me recover time. So that kind of gets back to that point of, like, hey, we're investing time to get time back. Second thing was, we can see topics like enhancing student engagement, right? We see things like, and going to the pink one there, supporting students with special education. We can talk about some of those examples today, right? Streamlining lesson planning, or just going back to this, getting time back, reducing administrative tasks as well. So these are all, ways that Texas AFT members responded that they're using it. And please feel free, to dive into the chat and add some other ways that you might be using it. But I would say that the trends that we saw at Texas AFT are pretty fitting to, like, a national study that we did that was much broader and had a much larger sample size, but confirmed that, like, the most popular use cases are things like creating or updating lessons plans, or supporting materials, brainstorming new ideas, simplifying complex topics into something more simple for students. Again, there we see that freeing up time and that differentiating instruction. And it's really interesting to see how students are thinking about this as well too, right? So students are seeing this as, like, hey, helping me summarize information, or getting started in brainstorming in assignments, right? Or getting answers to something I need a little bit more quickly, even getting some feedback on my work, or improving my writing skills. And then I would say this takes us, and I see that in the response, I used it to write my TESS skill. Oh, right on. That's cool. There's, so many ways. So keep sharing the ways, and we can learn from each other how we're doing that. But I just want to acknowledge also, and we're going to get to, I see Rob's joined. Hi, Rob. Thanks for joining. We also want to talk about, like, the guardrails and the concerns that educators have about, like, as they go to use AI, or students go to use AI, what are kind of the concerns that might exist around the use of generative AI in the classroom? And this shows that, like, some of the major concerns that came up are questions of, privacy, potentially bias, equity and access, academic integrity, right? And balancing technology use with a human interaction, which I think is super important. I would say here, I think one thing that we agree on is really that the human is at the center of this, right? And that includes both for the student, but for the educator, right? It's always going to be the teacher at the center with the AI as a tool that's augmenting. And so I would like to just share, in response to what we see here, and others can put some concerns or thoughts that they have in the chat, how we think about some of these concerns, right? And this right here shows that national level data again, where like we consistently saw a question about, hey, is this going to increase plagiarism and cheating? Or number 2 on the list there was, is this going to result in students becoming like overly dependent on AI tools? And there's some of those same concerns about privacy, security, and regulations, and so on. So I'll add a few things, and I want to go to Rob here regarding the guardrails. But I think it's important to first, like on that first point, I'm going to go back real quick. 42% increase. So 42%, had this concern that, man, is this going to lead to an increase in plagiarism or cheating? So, with any new tool, I think it's really important to talk with students about what are the right and wrong ways that we would do this, and setting really clear expectations about that for students, right? And again, I'm going to go to Rob shortly for the guardrails, but I'll also flag, like, just be careful about detection tools. They can be inaccurate, and we think like relying on those tools alone is not appropriate, and you should provide human oversight for those things. And that we've just seen, some concerns with AI detectors being able to potentially return false positives, right? So that's, again, particularly that could be biased against non-native English writers. So just be really careful about using a tool like that, and then how you may or may not want to approach a student with that. And the last thing I'd say here is just like, when it comes to the overdependence question, yeah, it's really important to think about like what's the right level or appropriate uses of AI, when and how to use it. And I like this kind of spectrum that can have you consider, hey, with a younger population, that's going to look different than an older population, where with that older group, you might have more increased responsibility and autonomy and can use that more broadly. But certainly with the younger students, I think you can provide those like tighter guardrails and kind of keeping the teacher in the loop while the AI might be being used by students. So maybe there's a case where AI is being used to help a student in a differentiated way, on a learning passage, right? But the teacher's in the loop during that, for example. So I think I'll just close with this. Like, here's kind of a few bullets around how we think about some safe and secure best practices, which is like continually focus on the human and social aspects of education. I mean, again, human and teacher always at the center, right? And that is how it should be. Think about how you can prevent an over-reliance by encouraging critical thinking and information literacy skills. Again, we saw in the data, those are always going to be relevant skills. So just, having that mindset. And then any technology used, it's really important to you be aware, rather than just go out and download or adopt or start using something. Understand the privacy and the autonomy of students, and make sure that it's really clear how the technology is going to be leveraged, what the technology is designed to do, and then what are the assurances around privacy, right? So that we can get the best of that. And I think that's that last bullet. It's like, what you want to go with tools that are inclusively designed so you can really enable learners at all levels to leverage the technology, so we don't like exacerbate the equity issues that could be related to this. So I'm gonna, Rob, I saved this slide for you. I'm gonna go over to Rob just to say, like, in short, I would refer to the AFT guardrails, because I think it's a fantastic document that really does lay out, how that you should be considering the use of AI technology.
So I sent a request, so I got 2 slides that I'd like to share if I can do that. Oh, see, we can do that. Let's see here. Okay, good. There it is. Sure. And I hope you can see my screen. There we go, from the beginning.
Yeah.
The first one is, I hope is that showing up? Okay, good.
It is for me. Is it showing up for others?
I can see it.
Yes, we can all
Okay.
see it.
Thank you. So a while back, the AFT has been working on AI for a while, and we engaged with teachers across the country. In fact, for this work, we engaged more than 70 teachers to help us. And the idea was to create guardrails, not from the point of view of people who don't teach kids. every day, but from people who teach kids every day. This is about, we went out and got early adopter, people who use AI in their classroom, like Greg was talking about, is pretty common now, but back then was not as common. And we went out and got our early adopters, and we said to them, okay, we need to have some guardrails, common sense guardrails in place. And I put the QR code there, you can download the document. But it's really important to understand that where AI is today, you need guardrails. You need to make sure that you're putting things in perspective. You're using these tools responsibly. That's probably the best way to say it. And Greg was talking a little bit earlier about, just a few minutes ago, about the age. Our work with the AI developers, children under the age of 13 should never be on there using this stuff on their own. It has to be a lot of control and a lot of adult supervision around the use of AI before the age of 13 and after the age of 13. But actually, the student-facing stuff should come a little bit later in their schooling. Teachers should be very careful about using, especially the open chatbots or anything like that. You can create your own internal limited chatbots or closed chatbots, but when you start going out and start using these, I'll use the one everybody knows about, ChatGPT, really shouldn't be used for younger kids. So I'm going to not spend a lot of time on all these. The document is quite extensive, or it's about 30, 40 pages long, and we have examples of all these. But I'm going to go through the 6 core values that the AFT members came up with. And I stress that. This is our members talking here. The first consideration is you maximize safety and privacy. And I'm going to say it a different way. If you can't provide safety, privacy, you don't use it. It's that simple. You don't say, oh, we're going to take a risk. Oh, it's 95% chance here. It's if there's not enough safety protocols in place, don't use that technology. And that's, if you read the document, it will say that it's not about a compromise. We don't compromise. We don't talk about it. It's about, if you can't pretty much guarantee the safety, walk away, because, you never get all that data back. One of the things you know about technology is once there's a breach, it's a breach, and you're not going to get it back. The second one Greg already talked about, which is that teaching and learning is a human endeavor. It's about relationships. It's about interaction and individuality, and that regardless of the tools you're using, that will always be center in what happens in schools and how teaching and learning happens. It cannot be allowed to replace direct in-person interaction with students, teachers, support staff. It can't happen. The third core value is empower educators to make the educational decisions. This is crucial. And this is what AFT is driving in every one of our relationships around artificial intelligence, is to make sure our members' voices are front and center, not only in how it's used in the classroom, but in the development of these tools, in the procurement of these tools. They have to, when we talk about educational decisions, every teacher on this Zoom right now knows that the people who go out and buy tools are making huge educational decisions about what happens in the classroom. And if our members aren't part of that process, then they're not part of the educational decisions that affect their classroom. And when we talk about AI, that's a major part of what's going on in their classroom. Technologies, everybody talks about this, advanced equity and fairness. Of course, that goes, the bias, all the other stuff that people talk about that, that's inherent to these things. But as hopefully we get better at using them and the models themselves get better over time, we can help get to a point where we can actually advance equity and fairness. I think it's a struggle today. I'm going to be really honest. I think it's a struggle today, but I believe hopefully in the future we can get better at that. And we're only going to get better if we address it and we actively do something about it. especially when we talk about places. I was just writing, some points for AI in Puerto Rico. And one of the, when you talk about bringing artificial intelligence to Puerto Rico and some of the things there, you can imagine the lack of resources, the lack of support they're going to have. The chance of that increasing the digital divide is enormous in a place like Puerto Rico. And so we have to be very careful there. Number 5 is advanced democracy. And this is AFT through and through. These tools must build people's capacity to understand democracy and support it. And we must do everything we can to fight those things that undermine democracy, like misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes, and all those kind of things. I hope there's a history teacher among you guys on. And the reason I'm saying that is because if you read Plato's Republic, he talked about disinformation for teenagers and how important it was to make sure that younger people get accurate information and not get caught up in some of the misinformation that was going around. And that was 2,500 years ago. So what was true back then is true today. We got to make sure we advance democracy. And number 6, teach digital citizenship. Teach the students how to use these things properly, how to use them responsibly, and make sure that, for lack of a better way to say it, the mistakes we made with social media, allowing it to run itself, and everyone, again, every teacher on here understands the impact of social media has had in their classroom. We need to make sure we don't just repeat those mistakes. We learn from that mistake and we do better the next time around. So if you're going to you can just go to and search AFT's Common Sense Guardrails. You can see it if you didn't get the QR code. This quote, I think, is really important, and this is what this Zoom meeting is about today. Pat from Teach AI said, "You must learn AI before you can teach using AI." And that's a critical thing. And so we're learning about it so that as we get better at it, we can use it to help our students be better learners. The last thing I'm going to say is that was our first set of guard rules. And just like everybody talks about, AI is moving fast, fast, fast. And so we're already working on the next version of this. I'll share some information nobody else knows about. We actually have a listing of about 6 different new guardrails that we have already kind of working on right now. But if any of you are interested in helping us with that, don't be afraid to send me an email and say, "Hey, I would like to be part of the AI ad hoc that works on the guardrails." And that's my email right there. And I want to thank you for giving me that time to share the guardrails, because I do believe it was quality work. I do believe it's moved the field. I know that the document, I speak from the national office. We were actually shocked at how far and the reach of this document is gone viral all over, literally over the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. So I want to make sure folks can see. Do I need to reshare?
I see your PowerPoint.
Okay, great. Rob, thank you. And I'm glad that you invited folks to get in on that process for the second round of the guardrails. I concur and can kind of attest to the fact that that document has been incredibly valuable. And we've had the chance to share it even beyond the AFT community. So thank you for your work on that. We're going to transition now to talking about the tools. And at this point, I'm going to transition over to Emma Gray to take us through some of the resources.
Hey, everybody. Good to see you again, Rob. We are here to learn, and a really good way to do that is to get our hands dirty. So if we can go to the next slide here, Greg. Let's start off with a little bit of vernacular. So some of you have heard of ChatGPT, potentially less of you have heard of Copilot. I'm curious, with a show of hands, how many of you are in a Microsoft school? This doesn't actually matter for your participation, I'm just curious. school that uses Microsoft tech. It's okay if you're all Google too, or even just drop in the chat. What technology do you use in school today? And I'll just keep an eye on that as we go through Google Classroom. Yeah. So if you are a Google teacher, you will have access to Copilot for personal use, unlimited for free, and that's the one on the right. You can access it at copilot.microsoft.com. It's on the Apple App Store, it's on the Google Play Store, and it is now available on WhatsApp, which is just about the quickest install process that I've ever seen. If you scan that QR code there. If you are a Google teacher, this is how you access Copilot. If you are a Microsoft teacher, I saw a few of you in the chat here, you have access to Copilot for Work called M365 Copilot. The difference, the primary difference, is that Copilot for Work, depending on your license, might have access to some of your files, which allows you to do a couple of extra things. And it also has something called enterprise data protection. So while Copilot on the right, you can create a personal account and it'll know about as much about you as your typical search engine does. Copilot for Work, which is the one on the left, has enterprise level data protection, eyes off, no data is taken and used for model training. It has got some of our data, like state-of-the-art data protection built in there. So if you're a Microsoft teacher, that's the one I'd recommend. If you are not a Microsoft teacher, Copilot for personal use is where you'll go and it'll know about as much about you as your Googles and your Bings do. So without further ado, before we get into it, very, very quick crash course on how to interact. This is the most foundational kind of conversation style LLM interaction. It's going to look a little bit like ChatGPT. Copilot, regardless of the version you're using, uses the newest models from OpenAI at no cost, which is kind of awesome. And also has sort of the paid tier level privacy if you're using M365 Copilot for Work. So yes, Rob, 100%. The one on the left is the best for protecting data. If you have Microsoft, any login, even the free Microsoft licenses that your district can get, you can always request those. Those are available at no cost to education institutions. Move along to the next slide here, Greg. We are going to do a quick little crash course on the elements of a good prompt. So we'll just go through, we can do all the different transitions here. Maybe not all of them. There we go. Nice. So a couple of things that can be helpful. This is sort of the, not a 101, but a 201 level download on something that you could put into one of these chatbots, be it ChatGPT, be it Copilot or anything else, and get something fairly useful out. You can give it a persona and an objective. The audience is really important, that context. I don't know, those of you who learn public speaking in school, right? Audience, purpose, context, it's very much that. And also some boundaries. We know that humans are often more creative when they're given constraints, and it turns out that LLMs or large language models do the same thing. Now, this is the guidance that came out right as large language models started being used more and more. But as they are getting better, we know this technology is growing and changing. If you saw the Minecraft video, you can actually get pretty darn casual with it. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. Greg, if you want to share this to the chat so that we can keep going, we'll jump over to the check your sources slide. We'll make sure this reference is available to people when we get hands-on, which will be very, very shortly. I'll go through this quickly. Checking your sources. A really cool thing about Copilot is that it cites where from the internet it claims to have found its data. Now, this is not a complete silver bullet when it comes to AI fabricating things. We know just based on how the technology works, it will find patterns that don't always make perfect sense. But this is where the advice that resonated most with me in a really interesting way comes along, which is that if something smells fishy, this is the quote, it's from Hal Abelson from MIT. If something smells fishy, you should double check. So what does double checking look like? What does something smelling fishy look like? It turns out if you have no background knowledge on what your large language model is telling you, say you're trying to learn something new or you are a student, then you're not going to be able to identify whether something is off. And the second part of that advice, if something smells fishy, I guess you need to have smelled fish before, so that's how you would detect that. But the next thing is then you should double check. What does double checking mean? What does that process of fact checking and sense making look like? And that starts to pull the curtain away a little bit. And you talk about what Pat says with learning AI before you teach AI. I would say even before that, learn your information literacy and your digital citizenship and your critical thinking before AI, because that is one leg of this three-legged stool. Your underlying information literacy, fact-checking skills are going to be so important when it comes to you using these tools in the most powerful way and in a way that saves you time and actually adds value. So if you're saying, hey, I'm not very comfortable with AI tools, but I want to prepare my learners for the future, the very first thing you can do is go back to the basics with information literacy and teach that kind of fact-checking capabilities. I think that, yeah, librarians have been teaching it forever. Our history teachers know that's important. Now we'll move along to the next one here. This is what I said about casual prompts, and we're gonna let you all go into some breakout rooms in a second here, but these are some examples of prompts that have worked fairly well for me. You know, generate a template for an IEP meeting write-up. Given, and this is something I use for cognitive overwhelm, given a list of things I have to do for the next 3 hours, help me plan my day or my afternoon or my evening. Help me generate a professional sounding email. This is really good at like 4:30 at the end of your day, or 8:30 or 9:30 at night, and you're like, I just need to get something out, but I'm tired, and maybe you know, I'm gonna struggle to put the words together, or I'm in a challenging situation. Maybe I'm frustrated with the situation in class and I want to sound diplomatic when I'm following up with some parents. This tool can really help you to find the right words. And the other thing that I've heard from learners in sort of the upper years of high school and in higher education are saying they're using it to rephrase their questions. So, quote, it doesn't sound dumb. And, you know, there's an unfortunate or like sort of lining to that, right? Which is that people are insecure when it comes to interacting with other people. But what I really love about that is that Copilot can become your judgment-free zone to rephrase things and to be more confident when you bring your ideas or your questions to other people. So think of it as a safe space to fail. Now, you should go to that copilot.microsoft.com website or download the app or add it to WhatsApp, and we're going to put you into some different breakout rooms, and Greg and I will cycle through to support as you run some experiments yourself. What works, what doesn't work. If you're using copilot.microsoft.com, you also have access to the voice functionality. So here's an example. If you can see on my phone, there's like the little microphone here. You'll see it on the website as well. That gives you access to a real-time, sometimes a little bit uncannily recognizably human, but obviously not voice that you can use for brainstorming and real-time conversations. It helped me figure out what kind of a stir fry I should make for dinner the other night. There are all kinds of things that you can do with that one, so I encourage you to experiment with that too. But with that, we will send you off for a hands-on session and touch base in a little bit. Does that work?
Sounds good. I think someone gonna work our break room magic there.
I
Yes, we
see
can.
it.
You see it? Okay, great. All right. I don't know if we have Emma back yet either. Yes, no.
Yes, it looks like everyone's back now.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I think everyone's coming back in. I hope you had a great breakout session there and got to play around with the tool. In the breakout I was in, it was really interesting to see how we kind of started with what we would call like an average prompt, and then it returned some information, but we would call like the results kind of average. And as we kind of kept refining the prompt, we got something pretty cool at the end. So I don't know if Kimberly or if you all want to weigh in, Mary, you want to weigh in on that real quick. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
We were asking, Kimberly was asking a question about creating prompts that students can actually relate to in 2024 for argumentative writing. And so Greg was kind enough to create some prompts for us, which were very, very good. And so he'll be emailing us those later, but the more specific you are, then the better of a prompt you get, because we started off with something pretty basic and it gave us some ideas, but then you have to continue adding more to it. Like, oh, well, can you make it to, relate to teenagers in 2024? Yeah. So great
It's all about what you put into it, right? It's the art of the prompt.
Yes.
And I just want to, like, the other thing we talked about was we're going to see Conmigo shortly. And we just talked about the difference because Conmigo is heavily scaffolded. So it kind of walks you through the prompts because it just asks you questions that will, feed the AI the information it needs. With Copilot, it's super powerful, but you do have to kind of, put together a good prompt and just kind of keep refining it until you get back what you want. I'm going to go over to Emma here and just, Emma, I don't know if you wanted to share any reflections, or I know you're going to be leaving us shortly as we transition to the Conmigo stuff, but I want to give you the stage back here.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a couple more minutes. We went through the voice element of Copilot, and how that's something that makes it a little bit different from some of the other tools you might have access to. We talked about using the voice and the chat in tandem and how you can use the transcript to sort of talk through your thinking and then get an interesting output that way. You developed prompts more iteratively over time, and we had a conversation where we added details as it kind of checked back with us to produce something new. I'm not sure if anyone from our room wanted to pipe up. Maybe you learned something new, maybe something was surprising.
No, I like the feedback where you talk to it and it just spits it back out. I love that feature.
I didn't show this, but you can interrupt it too, which is fun. So if it's going along a path that you don't like, you can go, wait, no, actually, and then it'll stop talking and then you can keep going. It's a nice cognitive load saver, right? If I'm tired at the end of a day, not too great. So it's nice to be able to lean on something and have a bit of an AI co-teacher, as it were. Greg, we'll go on to the next slide here and just talk through a couple of real quick resources. So that first video some of you saw, Minecraft AI, has those adorable videos with Chicken and Agent as they walk you through some basic AI literacy principles. I sent them to my grandparents. They were very grateful to have some idea of what's going on out there, but that's why we say it's designed for ages 8 to 108, and obviously beyond. It uses language that's approachable, and obviously the characters are super cute and we love them very much. And it's a really nice way to bring AI principles to people who want 3 or 4 minutes of a crash course. They also have parent guides available on that website. So for parent engagement as well around these conversations, it can be really cool. We'll pop next. And this will be the last thing I go through second last thing I go through before I go. Let's watch this video. Note something about the age, perhaps, is something else, which is interesting, and we'll chat about it at the end. Hoping there's sound. I'm not getting sound, Greg.
There we go. I think I fixed the problem, which was that I was muted. Starting. Good.
Experiments with one of our sons. As he's learning how to read, there are certain combination of letters that's hard for him to pronounce. And when I try to help him with that, sometimes he can get frustrated because it's a lot of repetition.
It felt like I was just saying the sounds of the letters. I think I kind of felt like I couldn't read much.
They get to generate their own stories, right? They love that. They get to pick the character, they get to pick the setting. And then now that the gamification has been added in, now they're earning things, right? So they know if they keep going, they can unlock new things. They get to choose their own adventure. And so it's unique for each one of them. They don't get the same story as the student sitting next to them. We're seeing the need for tools like this to try to help us make up and make gains over some of those losses that the children are coming in with. It just makes it so that they want to be actively involved.
When I started using Reading Coach, it first started off hard and then I got better and better. Now I'm very good at it. I can get better and better, and then I move to the next level with more harder stories. I use Reading Coach every day.
I don't know how they found the world's cutest kid for this video. But Craig, if you want to go to the next slide, I will share this to the chat. This is Microsoft's first and only so far AI tool featuring generative AI for under 13s. And the reason we can do that is because the input is so limited. So what I mean by that is a kid will they'll rock up to Reading Coach, and anyone can use this, parents can use this, they can set up accounts for their kids, you can use this in class. Kid can choose the character and they can choose the setting from 2 predetermined lists. And what that allows us to do from a testing standpoint is run every possible combination of characters and settings hundreds and thousands of times to make sure that anything that comes out is appropriate and age appropriate. Everything goes through 5 to 10 different levels of checks to ensure age appropriateness and level appropriateness wherever possible. So this is a tool that uses generative AI in a very constrained way for folks to practice their reading fluency in a judgment-free zone. So we've gotten all kinds of wonderful feedback on this AI tool for reading. Kids who would not step in front of class, would never raise their hands, building enough confidence using this tool in private to be able to step up and showcase their learning at different levels. We've heard stories of kids going up 3 grade levels in 2 months, which is astounding still to me, and we're so very excited about it. So if you do end up choosing to try Reading Coach with your learners, if you have readers who would like to practice, we're expanding to 80 languages in the next couple months. Right now it's just in English. But that is another Gen AI tool that I thought I would flag from Microsoft. And the final thing is for those of you in the Microsoft ecosystem, unfortunately, this next one on the next slide is not a Google teacher thing, but it is all free to educational institutions. So super, well, obviously affordable. We don't just have these tools for reading, we have them for numeracy and well-being, information literacy, and presentation skills, all of them bolstered with AI in different ways to help ensure that feedback gets back to students as quickly as possible with an educator in the loop, and lots of really cool uses of AI in those tools too. So we'll make sure all the links are shared to you afterwards if you're interested. But I thought I would pass that along as well. I don't know if we want to pause for feedback or based on time, move straight into Conmigo, Greg.
Yeah, no, I want to respect that. I think Emma's going to need to drop here soon. So, but I would just invite first to thank you, Emma, for presenting, and then any maybe quick questions for Emma, or just take a moment here. I think I see something going on in our chat. Nope, just thank you. And then, yes, I concur. Really appreciate you joining, Emma. And I'm going to stick on. So we're going to go into a new tool. We're going to say goodbye to Emma. Thank you, Emma. Have a great evening. And
Nice to meet you all.
thank
Good
you.
luck. Thanks. You've got this, Greg.
Thank you so
Hey,
much.
thank you.
You say, thanks for having me. Thanks for the time.
Of course. Take care.
Thank you.
So you all can see that we're going to shift into a different tool. And right now we're going to talk about a tool that, you know, from our experience, and Rob can attest to this in the chat if Rob's still here, this has been one that I think has really resonated with teachers because it is very scaffolded, and all of the scenarios that in this tool are really built for the teacher. So the concept here with Conmigo is that Microsoft has funded Conmigo to make this tool free to all educators. And it does actually use Microsoft technology as the AI that it runs on, but it's built for these custom scenarios. So I'm screen sharing here. You can see, when I say custom scenarios, when you were in Copilot, you kind of had to coach Copilot and give it prompts to say, hey, I need to have a lesson plan, or I need to write a newsletter. In this case, you're actually going to select from the options. And then as you select each of the options, so I can see an option here is writing learning objectives. I can see an option around creating a fun lesson class summary poem. I can see an option around creating a lesson hook or doing an exit ticket. Those are all awesome. Once you pick those, then there's where the scaffolding come in. You'll get asked a series of questions that help you get a great result. So I'm going to demo this right now, if that's okay. So I'm going to quickly stop sharing. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Conmigo tool, and then tell me, am I sharing at this point? I should not be, right? I'm pulling up the new, let me just pull up Conmigo. And I'm going to invite you, all of you, to pull up Conmigo as well. So it's in the chat, Conmigo. Here's I'll drop the link in the chat for everybody. There you go. Please try that link, and we'll do this together. So I am going to go ahead and join this. All right. Cool. Now you may need to do a quick sign up on that, but while you're doing that, I'm going to go back to screen sharing and I'm going to show you what it looks like when you're using Conmigo. So can you see my screen? I'll make sure that.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the response. So here's the scenarios, right? So you can see we could pick any of these and then we would get that guidance for how to create what we want as an output. So for example, if I wanted to make an IEP, which we know is super a time intensive task, the IEP assistant pops up. So here you can already see both the power of this and the way it's different from Copilot, right? I could generate an IEP through Copilot, but I have to keep prompting it with all of this information. So here, if I said, well, let's call this 6th grade science learning environment, right? And let's say the disability category, I'm just going to say like ADHD, and I might say attention, might say time on task. Like this, we might say as some of the challenges, we could say current strengths could be team player, loves to participate in class discussions. Anything else to help me do this together? Anyone throw in chat if anyone else wants to add something here. We're going to build this together. But this is truly how quickly we can do this. Not seeing any, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit draft in the combination plan, and you'll see how quickly this comes up. One thing I could have done, I didn't think of it at the time, was I could have specified that we were in Texas, or I could have given it further context. So that was just, I gave it very little context there, but you can see that it quickly produced for me, let's scroll all the way back to the top here, a draft, right? And just like with all of the outputs from AI, they're drafts and they need your attention. And that is, of course, the case with anything like as sensitive as an IEP. So we would take this information and then you'd be able to have a starting point, right? To then take this and begin to modify it. And you could align it as much as possible, to the current scenario and the specific student that you're building this for. But this kind of shows you, some of the power of the Conmigo tool. I'm going to go back to this IEP assistant, and I could say like, I might add in Texas, or I could begin to continue like refining this and get more. But I also want to go back and just show, going even out of IEP assistant, right? There are so many other cool tools that I could do, right? So here I'm selecting like a grade level, and I'm going to do a topic around like, sure, we'll do polynomials, why not? And write an exit ticket. And, it'll generate a couple of things for me. Here's one that it just kicked out right now, right? So this is the preview of Conmigo. What I want to do in this next breakout is then make sure everybody has the opportunity to go in, and I would say do this, in your group, just pick one of these tools. It could be the leveler, it could be a letter of recommendation, it could be learning objectives, it could be a lesson plan, it could be any of these tools, but maybe pick one or two of these tools and just as a team start to work through this and use your context, use your classroom scenarios. And again, the goal here is that everyone leaves today with something they can take back to their classroom and use. So with that, Claudia, I think now would be a good time for us to go back out to the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's do this. Give me just 1 minute, please. Project. Welcome back, everybody. I'm going to screen share one more time here. Yeah. Okay. So just as we're wrapping up, I would say, thank you. I want to reshare. Let me make sure I'm sharing it. Can you see, which screen am I sharing? Can you see the one that says demo on it?
I can see it.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I realize I'm not in the presenter mode at this moment. But I think that's okay. I just wanted to make sure everybody had the hashtag here around conmigo.ai/teachers. And then I wanted to also just share some additional resources for continued learning. But before we do, I guess I would just ask the group, what did you think of Conmigo versus Copilot? Love any thoughts or reflections on that. And I'd love to hear what people found today, either that they could take back to their classroom, or if there's one thing, one tool, one idea that they came away with.
Well, I was super impressed with the lesson planning on Conmigo. I thought that was very powerful, and that you could narrow it down so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to share what we did? Because we were just doing that together, right?
Well, we were throwing stuff out there, and as it narrows down, it comes to exactly what you need it to be. If I'd had my teak sitting in front of me, I could have narrowed it down even better to that specific day of what I want each day to look like. It was that specific.
Yeah. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Any other thoughts, reactions, or feedback? Using the teacher wait time here, I'll give it another little bit. You can put those in chat too, if you want to keep giving any feedback. I see in chat like, hey, it's more of a database type of ChatGPT compared to the other one. Right on. Copilot was fun for the conversational aspect. Right on. Beth, do you want to elaborate on that one?
Sure. When we were playing around with Copilot, just being able to talk to it and sort of stream of conscience, not necessarily having to type it out, it felt like having a conversation with another person, which I felt like was kind of fun.
That's cool. So what you were doing in your breakout group when you had Copilot was you were just kind of using the mic and just speaking directly to it rather than typing, sounds like.
Right.
And then it's super conversational, right? And I heard you were talking about, hey, you could just interrupt it and be like, well, not quite that direction, just pause for a second. I actually meant this, right?
Right.
Okay, that's cool. That's good feedback. I'm glad you appreciated that conversational aspect. Any other feedback?
I sort of seen it. Copilot is more like ChatGPT,
Yeah,
and the Kaminga is more like Magic School.
yeah,
That's the way I've seen it.
100%. That's a great parallel. I like that. I think it's right. Yep, ChatGPT and Copilot is a similar interface, right? And they're both like super powerful. And I like, what I just saw, Copilot is ChatGPT. That's actually right. So Copilot leverages ChatGPT, right? So ChatGPT, that same large language model is what Copilot runs on. It's just an interface.
Want to go outside?
Yeah. And it was a good parallel also with the Magic School Bus versus the Conmigo. But I mean, I think I would just say that in the case of the Conmigo, and I know less about the Magic School Bus case. Just make sure you're familiar with the data privacy, all the considerations about the tools that you would use. Juan, did you want to add anything else? Because you said, hey, Copilot is ChatGPT, and then earlier you talked about it's more of a database type of ChatGPT compared to the other one.
Well, I mostly use ChatGPT, and I feel more comfortable using ChatGPT. Like for example, I tried to use the last one we did.
Conmigo.
Yeah, I tried to use that one, and it's very specific. But when when you use ChatGPT, you can actually tell it to do more stuff. Just on a regular ChatGPT, for example, earlier I said that I did a poem in Spanish. Actually, I did it in English first, where I used iambic pentameter to talk about Day of the Dead, and it created it for me. So then but I did it like 3 years ago, and I must have been using ChatGPT, and I didn't even know that. I didn't even know it existed 3 years ago, but I used it, and I created that so today I was trying to use the Conmigo,
Yeah.
and I tried to do the same thing from the Spanish perspective, and I just went back to regular ChatGPT, and
Okay.
I was able to create it in iambic pentameter in Spanish.
This is a really good scenario because you could do that in Copilot. That thing you said, it would be easier to do what you just said in Copilot than it would have been to do in Conmigo, right? But where were you when you showed up today? Remember, we did the poll of the 1, 2, 3, and the 4. Where did you put yourself on the grid?
On number 1.
Yeah,
On both times I'm number 1.
both times. Well, in terms of like you're new to, so how you? It sounds like you've been doing AI, playing around with AI for a while.
Yeah, I've been doing it. In fact, with my groups, I've been using it for. So I coach sports, and the one I've been using it a lot is so I coach cross country right now. And last year we took our team to state, so I started using analyzing my athletes' times, the every mileage, and I was able to analyze their mileage. And then this year I took it another level where based on their times, I made AI or ChatGPT in this case. Write down the scenarios from a weekly exercises, and all the different scenarios for the week and for the what to work for in the future, and basically they get a kind of like a college level perspective of a coach.
Yeah,
So I kind of like that, but sometimes it backfires because they heard the word slightly fatigue, and since I coach girls, one of them got really all scared. So, coach, was I really that fatigued everybody's fatigued the last mile. I know it's 3 miles.
Yeah.
But I'm excited that I use it not only for coaching, I use it for in the classroom. I use it like in Pear Deck uses AI now, and I plug in all my notes in there, and I'm able to make multiple choice questions, and I'm having kids do that. So it's a little bit off of what you're doing here, but I mean, I've also do a lot of like speeches. Like we had a pep rally last week where they had recognized our girls, and in the speech I kind of introduced them with a like kind of like poetically individually, like if they were like wrestling, but of course if they're girls, so I kind of made it more poetic based on what they're doing, stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
Nice. So when I asked you that question earlier, I think on the poll when you came in, you were probably an enthusiast or an advocate. And I think like I don't know where you rated yourself, but based on you were certainly not a novice based on what you've shared. And I mentioned that because like depending on where you're at, this gets back to this Conmigo versus Copilot. I think the answer is both, right? They each have their advantages, but certainly I would say, especially if you're calling more in the novice or explorer category, you're going to enjoy the Conmigo and the scaffolding and the scenarios. But then what you just said, Juan, was like, yeah, but you can do so much more in Copilot or ChatGPT, right? Because it's open-ended and it's a more powerful tool. So I think it's both of those things, and people will use them for these different scenarios. And as you grow kind of in your experience, you might find yourself wanting to use Copilot more than Conmigo. But
yeah, it's more organized. Like Conmigo is more organized, and it's kind of like precise and concise to the point.
Well, thank you for that feedback and for the sharing. And I guess I just want to thank the whole group at this point and say, I've shared here some additional resources for continued learning. I want to point out that through our partnership with AFT, we're also publishing content to the Share My Lesson platform. So go check out Share My Lesson. And we also even have webinars on there. If you appreciated Emma today, and I think she's fantastic. She did a webinar for the AI Educator Brain series, and I would recommend checking that out if you want to hear a little bit more from Emma and her kind of sharing and showcasing some of these tools. And then for the Microsoft specific tools, we do have that AI education hub, and you can look there, and even if you're inclined, take one of our learning paths, and we do have little certifications that you can earn as you pursue those learning paths. So just wanted to share some of those. And seconding what Rob put in the chat there, the educator brain on Share My Lesson is really cool.
I should have typed in the AI educator brain.
That's right.
The educator AI brain. So, but it's a great series. It's very well received by our members.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's great content there. And I would encourage the team to go there for further learning, and otherwise, just thank you. Any last comments or reflections? And I'm going to invite Jamie to come in here too, and also Claudia. Just thank you all for convening us, and bringing the group together today to do this learning. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, thank you, Greg, and please tell Emma thanks from us here. And Rob, thank you for coming on and discussing that. And just remember, if you're interested in helping AFT with the next guide, AI guide, please shoot Rob an email, or you can shoot Claudia or I an email, and we will get that to Rob. So with that, I don't have anything else. If anyone has any questions for Greg. Greg, thank you again for helping us do this.
Yep.
I learned
Thanks,
something every
guys.
time. So, but thank you, and you all have a good night, and we'll see you next time.
Good
Thanks so
night,
much.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.